All right, welcome everybody. Finance 334 on insurance. This week we're going to talk specifically about life insurance. You've probably already been able to see that from the discussion board where we're talking about different types of life insurance, specifically different types of universal life insurance. Universal life insurance, as I mentioned on the discussion board, is kind of a hybrid type of contract between a mix between term insurance and traditional whole life insurance. Just gives a few more flexibility options, and so it's become a very popular product over the past, I'd say, 2 decades, so 20, 30 years. Universal life has become more common. Way back in the day, insurance was almost always traditional whole life coverage. The big companies like your Northwestern Mutuals of the world, your New York Life, another big one that's been around for a long time, those companies would sell traditional whole life policies way back in the day for just burial benefit. That was the primary purpose. Give somebody a few $1,000s to bury them, and have a funeral. And then life insurance, of course, has expanded over the years, especially as it's become a significant play, as far as avoiding taxation. So we'll get into that a little bit later in the course, probably tonight, as far as features of life insurance. But wanted to give you kind of a brief overview. Of course, tonight, since it's the first week, we're going to go over some expectations. Hopefully these expectations are a review for all of you. They shouldn't be any surprises. There shouldn't be any surprises based on the things that I say, because if you've ever taken an online course before, almost all of us have the same types of expectations. We might do it a little bit different, but the school is the one that usually sets out the basic expectations that are consistent across instructors, or should be consistent across instructors, with a few minor nuances or differences. You'll notice something, probably already have off the bat. I go a little bit faster than maybe some of your instructors do. I figure we've only got an hour a week, so we're going to pack as much as we possibly can into these hours that we have. And then, even having said that, 2 different chapters of information into one night, when we're also trying to get ready for a discussion board, assignment, and a test, is nearly impossible, but we'll try to get you as much as we possibly can in this short period. Having said that, even though I go quickly, one of the things I want to make very clear is that all of you are welcome to just type in any questions or concerns or comments that you have, and I'll be happy to respond to them. I've got the chat board up. I'm always monitoring it, so I'm always going to give you feedback, at least within a reasonable amount of time, if you've got a quick question about the content that we're discussing. If you've got an off-topic question about the course or anything like that, I'd encourage you to stay on after the class is over, and then we'll chat about those unless we specifically bring them up during the course. So we'll try to stay on track, try to stay on point, on topic, while we're together. All right, so a couple agenda items for tonight. We've got to do some housekeeping, basic expectations issues at the beginning. Then we'll go over chapters 11 and 12, go over some of the slides that the book has for those chapters. And then finally, as we will every single week, we're going to spend some time going over the test for this week and make sure that you feel comfortable that at least you know the topics that will be covered. So I always give you a heads up on the topics that will be covered, so that then you can go back to the chapters and have some more purposeful study. What do I mean by that? Well, some of these textbooks aren't very interesting. That's my humble opinion as an instructor. Instructors that write these textbooks are very proud of the content. Unfortunately, they're not very good at making it very easy to read and very interesting. However, this particular course on insurance is better than most. It's not as dry as, say, a math class or an accounting class as far as the text. It's a little more interesting. Having said that, there's a lot of content, right? So what we expect you to do is to read through chapters 11 and 12, but when I mean reading through the chapters purposefully, what I mean is I'm going to give you the topics that will be on the test that week. If I were you, I would take some quick notes on those different topics, the specific topics that will be on the test. And then as I read, I'm going to pay careful attention to those particular topics, right? So that I make sure and feel comfortable and confident before I get to the test. Now, I'm well aware that there will be a chunk of you, a handful of you participating in the course that will not listen to the session, will not know the topics, and then when you get to it, you'll hurry and just do some Google searches to try to find the answers. Be aware that in a class like this, and in all the classes that I know of through Stephen Sandiger, and I've been teaching for 6 years, and I've probably taught 100 courses in that 6 years, most of the test questions are a little bit tricky, and it's not intentional to have you get it wrong. It's intentional to stop the person who doesn't put any preparation into the week from getting a perfect score, right? You might say, well, I always get a perfect score, and then kudos to you, you're a genius. But for most of us, if we haven't read the material and at least have a basic understanding of the material, the test questions can seem tricky at times. And that is meant to be that way, not so that you'll get it wrong, but just so that people in an online class like this will put in some effort, into reading the material and studying and preparing for those tests, okay? So that shouldn't be any surprise to you. Let's talk about some of the expectations. I mentioned we've got to do a little bit of housekeeping and talk about a few things. So in a class like this, consistent with other classes that you've probably taken, we've got 4 or 5 elements to your grade, right? We've got the assessments, and the first 3 aren't worth as much. The final assessment is worth almost a letter grade and a half of your final score is that final test. But overall, testing has to do with about 2 letter grades of your score, 3 letter grades of your score in total, okay? So if you don't take any of the tests, or if you fail every one of them, it becomes very difficult unless you do perfectly, unless you do perfect on everything else, and to be able to pass the class. We'll have the weekly tests. Most of them are multiple choice. Some of them are true false. Some of them are a little bit tricky as far as the questions, but if you've studied the topics within the chapters that we've given you in the session, you should be in great shape, okay? So that's the tests. Then every week we should have a discussion board. As we've already mentioned, the discussion board this week is specific to universal life insurance and a discussion about universal life insurance. For this week and for every week, just be aware that to get full credit on the discussion board, and you've probably heard this before, but you need a main post in by Wednesday at midnight. That main post needs to be substantive. It needs to have 2 to 3 paragraphs and at least 1 to 2 references, okay? And then you need to have at least 2 peer responses that are completed by the end of the week, right? So if you get your main post and the 2 peer responses done, you have at least 2 days of participation. You got the main post completed and it's substantive, and you got it done by Wednesday at midnight. And then you got your peer responses done by Saturday at midnight. You'll get full credit, all 60 points that are available. The discussion board is one of the easiest places to get the points. It's also one of the places that people commonly trip up a little bit because they don't get that main post in on time, or they don't get enough, comments in a week, that we need at least the 3 posts, or, their main post isn't very substantive, and so they miss out on a few points there. But if you'll just follow the instructions and follow the expectations, the guidelines on the posts, it's not about being right or wrong, right? That's the nice thing about the discussion board. I'm not ever going to grade you down because you said the wrong thing or have a bad opinion. Every opinion is validated, and every opinion is worthwhile when it comes to the discussion board. Even if I personally, with my experience in insurance, think that you're incorrect, I'm not ever going to discount your score based on me thinking it's incorrect, okay? The discussion board's a valid place for you to voice your opinion, and it doesn't matter whether or not I agree or disagree. I might choose to disagree, and I might choose to make mention of that in a polite and respectful way, but it's not going to affect your grade. Okay, discussion boards should be, really simple, really straightforward. The one thing I will say that comes up every once in a while, and it has to do with the topic of plagiarism. When we talk about plagiarism, we're talking about using somebody else's material without referencing, right? And sometimes on the discussion board, because there's not, a Turnitin score, and a plagiarism check per se from the school, some people just, cut and paste information that they see from online and just cut it and paste it onto the discussion board. I will tell you that after 6 years of doing online classes, it's very easy for me to tell if all you did was cut and paste something online. Okay, so please don't do that. The point of the discussion board is for you to go out and find information and then to give your opinion, to formulate an opinion and give your opinion. Yes, we want some references, but most of the material on the discussion board should be your opinions and perspective and own writing. If you look back at your main post and you see that most of the content is something that you are quoting from online, then you need to add more of your opinions and more of your wording to that discussion post, or it will be docked, okay? Because the whole point of the discussion board is for you to form opinions and to share those, and to form some perspective and to share that perspective and experience. And then when you research, right, for the main post, all you're doing is you're finding complementary information and research based on the opinions and perspective that you've already come up with, okay, and formulated. That might be a little different from other instructors you've had, so let me break here real quick. Ron and Elvira, any questions about the discussion board, what my expectation is for the main post, Anything that worries you about that, or that you have any concerns before we get started? Any questions? Are we good? Everybody is that fair? Okay. Let me know if you have any questions as we continue to go. If you come up with some, don't be shy. If you come up with questions, it's probably likely that somebody else listening would have had them later, and it's great to get them out here up front. And that's why, Elvira, Ron, I really appreciate you being here. You're like surrogates for the rest of the class. You're representing the entire class by being here, and so I appreciate you being willing to come, sacrifice some time and effort and energy to be here during the live session instead of just reviewing it later, and also getting picked on a little bit, right? I'm never going to be rude or try to single you out or try to do anything that would embarrass you, but I'm definitely going to ask you a few questions and try to involve you a little bit. Elvira, you're welcome to use any resource you want. Okay. As far as documenting information and referencing information, it just needs to be, it can be an interview with somebody. It can be any kind of online material you can find. It can be a physical textbook if you'd like to refer to that. I mean, it can be any resource that adds perspective to what we're trying to discuss. Okay. All right. Okay, so that is discussion boards and a little bit about plagiarism, right? There's a no tolerance for plagiarism. So don't cut and paste. Don't use other people's material without referencing. And even if you are researching and using other material, it's always better to put that material into your own words, still referencing where you found that information, but not always quoting, exactly what somebody else said. Okay. We want to focus more on our own writing, our own perspective, our own opinions, and then supplement them with our online research. You'll learn and grow a lot better, and you'll gain a lot more from this class, even if it takes a little bit extra effort to do that if we do it the right way. Okay, when it comes to assignments, we're going to have an assignment every week except the final week. Assignments are a little bit tricky. A lot of people skip the assignments until the very end. It's just something that I've noticed in the years of teaching. A lot of people will put off assignments until the end, and assignments are what ends up being the reason for a lot of people not passing an online class, because they delay or procrastinate the assignments and then they wait a little bit too long. And as we all know, if we wait until week 4, something always inevitably comes up to make it very difficult for us to have the time that we need to get everything done, right? So I've done, I did my MBA online, okay, after I'd already gotten a different master's degree in financial services. And when I got my MBA online, it was uncanny. If I left things till the very end, my computer didn't work, my access didn't work for some reason, some family member got sick, or I wasn't, something came up with me, some kind of emergency. I mean, there's just 100 different things that can happen, right, to make it so it's very difficult for us to complete the work that we've put off. Okay, if we stay caught up, obviously much more likely to pass a class, and much more unlikely that we're going to have an emergency that's going to keep us away from getting through the course. So, okay, got a little bit sidetracked there, but when we talk about assignments, you've got one a week for the first 3 weeks. They're worth 120 points apiece, which means that the assignments are worth over a third of your grade. Okay, over a third of your grade comes from the assignments. The assignments in this class, just my personal opinion, are very straightforward, very easy. They're not going to take, an exorbitant amount of time. So just do them. Just keep on track with them. If you have any questions or concerns, get with me or get with Lindsay Haas, the learning coach for this mod. She is very good. I've worked with her for a few years now. So she's seen this course a couple different times and seen these assignments a few different times. She's a very good resource. But please use her wisely, right? If you email her or I on Saturday night about the assignment that's due that night, it's unlikely that you'll get a response before it's due. But if you get a hold of us either of us, either early in the week or even the middle of the week, we'll have plenty of time to be able to help you out and get you on track. Okay? Pretty straightforward, pretty fair. Okay, so that's the assignments. The assignment for this week is a set of short answer questions. It's a scenario problem that basically asks you about different life insurance scenarios, and there are 2 parts to each section. So when I say section, there's going to be A, B, C, D, E, F. All those are different sections. Each section is a short answer situation where there are 2 parts, though. One part is that you're going to actually tell me what the contractual feature of a life insurance contract that it's describing, okay, is. So let's say it's waiver of premium. That's a contract feature. And we're going to go over contract features tonight. But just keep in mind for the assignment that you'll need both the contract feature. You're going to describe the contract feature that the scenario is relevant to. And then you're also going to describe what happens, okay, in that situation based on that contract feature, okay? So right now, this might not make any sense to you. When you actually look at it and when you read the chapters, should be very straightforward, okay? Now, just something to keep in mind for the assignments. A lot of these assignments are going to have some word count that the school or the college has come up with, that some minimum word count. I am not going to count words on this particular assignment, just so you're heads up on it. And Ron and Elvira, I'm not going to make sure that you've got it in APA format, down to the, T's and I's, every little detail. What I am concerned with is that you organize this assignment in a way that makes it easy for me to grade, and it makes it easy for me to know that you understand the concept that it's asking for. So if you give some vague answer, or some answer that's too short, that might not demonstrate to me fully that you understand the concept, and I can't give you full credit. Okay, so don't get caught thinking, well, he doesn't care about how many words and he doesn't care about APA, so I'm going to do a sloppy job and not be very organized, and I'm not going to organize this so it's very easy to grade, and I'm not going to use very many words when I answer. That's all fine, but you're risking not getting full credit by doing all those things. I don't need perfect APA and I don't need a word count, but I do need you to make sure that you're comprehensively answering the question. Okay? Yeah, exactly, Ron. Just make sure that you've added a little bit of detail. Don't be so brief that I don't know for sure that you really understand the concept. Okay? And it doesn't take a lot, right? I mean, I just described how we're going to answer the assignment this week. It's you give the contract feature, right? That might be just a couple words, right? Because it's a contract feature. There's nothing to elaborate about that. But then it asks you to describe what happens if that situation, were to occur. Now, if you just say he dies or insurance pays, something that's so brief and so vague, I can't really understand that you know the answer, then I can't give you full credit, right? So just a full sentence, full thought, right? Make sure that it comprehensively answers the question. No big deal. So I think you guys are on it. I think you guys will be fine. And I think even if you're a little bit worried that you don't know exactly what I'm expecting from this assignment as far as how much, then just add a little more detail, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, because I'm not the kind of person who is going to try to find reasons to decrease your grade. I'm the kind of guy as an instructor that's always trying to find reasons to increase your grade, okay? And I'm going to take away as little as I possibly can, but I need to see that you have efforted it, and I need to see that you understand the concepts, right? That's the whole point. So if you'll do those two things and follow instructions, then I can give you full credit. Now, along the lines of assignments, I mentioned to you a lot of people get stuck in a kind of a rut of turning assignments in late. While it's not suggested or encouraged that you do turn in anything late in this class, as a policy, I accept all work until the last Saturday at midnight. Okay? So theoretically, if you wanted to wait and turn everything in on that last Saturday, you'd probably still pass the class as long as you did great work on everything. However, you'd probably not get an A in the class, okay? So it just depends on what kind of grade you're trying to get, because the average discount for late work is somewhere between 10 and 20% off, okay? And it just depends on how late it is, okay? If it's not very late, but it's late, it's almost always at least 10% off. If it's really late, we're talking a couple weeks late, you'll probably get closer to 20% off, okay? So at that point, it becomes almost impossible to get an A in the class if you've turned a lot of stuff in late. Okay? One more quick thing on assignments, and this is something that is a little bit different between me, I've heard, and other instructors and professors through the school, and that is that if you turn in an assignment and you don't get full credit for some reason, so I've said, hey, point D is incorrect, and you're missing point S. Right? Whatever. I'm just giving you a brief example. I would give you feedback in the notes that that's what was wrong, right? you would see that you didn't get full credit. And then I almost always encourage you to resubmit the assignment if you'd like for additional credit. What does that mean? Well, it might not mean that you get full credit on the assignment, but you are eligible for additional points if you'll effort the assignment and turn it back in again. Okay? And sometimes this is really, really easy way to get 10 or 20 or 30 more points on an assignment, right? If you just skip something or if something's wrong and you can correct it and turn it back in and I'll give you additional points, that could be a very easy way to get some additional points, okay? So I don't allow for test retakes, but I do allow for resubmissions on assignments for additional credit. Anybody, any questions on that or concerns before we move on with expectations for a little bit? So you are able to turn stuff in late, just won't be full credit, and you are able to resubmit work if you don't get full credit for additional points. Okay, so that's the what I wanted to talk about for assignments. One last thing. Okay, we talked about discussion boards and the expectations there. We talked about assessments. We talked about assignments. We have yet to talk about checkpoints. Checkpoints don't deserve a lot of our time and attention, but I will tell you this. Checkpoints are worth enough points, almost a full letter grade, that it's important, as far as I'm concerned, it's very important to get them done. Now, as you know, only 5 of the checkpoints each week are graded, right? So you're only eligible for 20 points a week, so only 4 of them really count, and then you've got as much as 3 of them that can be extra credit, right? And that basically gives you a cushion to get a few wrong. But if you're consistent with them and get quite a few right, checkpoints can amount to as much as a half a letter grade of extra credit, okay? So in my experience taking online courses, checkpoints, or whatever the school that I went to, called those daily, interactions with the school, little quizzes that I took, those were a great way, if I was consistent with it, to get some extra points in the class, just to give me a little bit of cushion just in case I bomb a test or struggle with one of the assignments, okay? So all of you know that, that should be nothing new, but I would just, if you're trying for an A from the class, or even if you're just trying to pass the class, checkpoints are a great way to give you some cushion. And I will tell you that if you come to me at the end of the class and say, hey, I really wanted an A from the class, what can I do? If I go back in and I see that you never did the checkpoints, I'm not going to be as inclined to help you get some extra credit. But if I see that you went in and tried to do all the checkpoints and you turned in all your assignments, then we could have a discussion in week 4 about how to try to help your grade. Whether that be some extra credit or additional assignment or something like that, okay? But I've got to be able to see that sufficient effort was put in before that point, or we're not going to be able to have a constructive conversation about extra credit, because you had the opportunity to do extra credit throughout the course when it comes to checkpoints, okay? Questions, concerns, checkpoints, anything we need to do before we get started on the content for tonight? All right. You guys are easy. You must be watching a baseball game in the background. I think we've got the Dodgers playing tonight. So you guys must be watching the Dodgers game while we're teaching tonight, because there's not a whole lot of questions yet. You don't need to ask questions, so I'm no pressure. Don't worry about it. Just giving you a hard time. I will say that during the Olympics, I would mute my TV behind teaching and have the Olympics on, but since the Olympics and before the Olympics, I've never had something like that. So yeah, nothing new, huh, Elvira? Good. Well, now that I've bored you to death with all the expectations that you already knew, right, let's get to the actual content. So Chapter 11 just gives you the basics of life insurance. So let's talk about it real briefly here. Pretty straightforward. And then Chapter 12 talks about more specifics and contract features, and you'll need to know those contract features in Chapter 12 for the assignment. So it's a little more topical to what we're doing. So we'll spend less time on 11 and hopefully a little bit more time on 12. So basically, life insurance is there to prevent, not to prevent, but to protect, okay? It's insurance to protect against premature death. If we all knew that we'd all live to age 100, okay, it would be very uncommon for people to buy life insurance. Life insurance primarily is protection and peace of mind for purposes of the possibility of premature death. If I've lived to 100, it's unlikely that I need insurance for insurance sake. Now, there are other reasons to get insurance, and we'll go into that later, and you'll learn about some of that for the discussion board. But for purposes of this conversation, in its purest form, life insurance is a peace of mind to protect against premature death. Now, of course, as you know, life expectancies have increased, and that's changed the life insurance industry. Life insurance has become less and less expensive as people have lived and begun to live longer and longer. So the longer on average that we as a people live, okay, the average mortality of people, then the lower the cost of life insurance. So sometimes when you hear those commercials on the radio that I hear once in a while that advertise life insurance rates have gone down and that you should call them and, insure a quote or AccuQuote or, whatever. There's like Select Quote. There's a bunch of different ones that do advertisements for life insurance, and most of them talk about the fact that life insurance rates have gone down, and that's absolutely true. Okay, it is a marketing ploy, but it's also true. Life insurance rates have gone down primarily because people are living longer. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of different reasons and needs for life insurance. As I said, if we all lived to 100 and we knew that we were going to live to 100, that would take out most of these needs. But most situations call for some life insurance. Okay. So as a life insurance agent back in the day, I would have people tell me, well, I'm single, I don't need life insurance. Or they'd say, well, I don't make money, so I don't need life insurance. My spouse needs life insurance. And, it's worth considering what the reason might be for everybody to have life insurance. And then, you might say, well, I'm in a situation right now that I can't afford it. That's a different situation. But most people need some life insurance. And let me just describe a situation, because a lot of people that are single are just like, well, I don't need life insurance. Well, if something happens to you, somebody else is still going to bury you and have a funeral and do those things that are necessary from a cost standpoint to distribute your estate and get you buried. Now, if you've already prepaid all that stuff, and if you have nothing, no assets, and if you're in a very unique situation as far as that's concerned and you're single, potentially life insurance isn't as needed. But I could make a case almost in every single situation that most people need life insurance. Now, when we think about life insurance, usually it's needs-based. Needs-based means that usually we're paying something off, like we're paying a funeral, we're paying off debt, those kinds of things. But there's also a situation where you are in a position where you earn income, right? And if you were to die prematurely, then the people that you support financially with your income probably need you to be able to replace that with life insurance if you were no longer there. So that's the most common thing, is we're trying to replace income just in case something happens to us before we retire. Okay. So you had to pay for your brother and your dad's funeral. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, so you go through a situation like that, Elvira, and it's like, go out and get that $5,000 or $10,000 policy so that somebody else doesn't have to pay for your funeral service, hopefully, right? And there are different circumstances that prevent people from getting coverage, but most of the time it's just a matter of efforting it a little bit, because it's usually not a cost issue. Life insurance for $5 or $10 is very, very inexpensive, and so there's not a lot of reason to go without when it's so low cost. But it is a little bit of a hassle, and so a lot of people don't do it because of that. That's fortunate, Ron. The nice thing about life insurance, too, is in most cases, if you can process the claim, you can process a claim before you even have to pay bills. I mean, it can be that fast. Or, some people put a funeral on their credit card, and then within a few days after the funeral, they've got the life insurance money to pay themselves back. But it's usually pretty painless, pretty quick, and because of that, life insurance is a great tool, to have for when something happens. When I used to sell life insurance, I will say this, Ron and Elvira, when I used to sell life insurance, it used to really actually frustrate me, and this is kind of weird, but it would frustrate me when I'd hear a news story, and then at the end, if somebody had been in a car accident and passed away, or if somebody had gotten a disease, and then passed away quickly, you feel terrible for those young families, that lose their dad or their mom. But one of the things that always irritated me, and just in a strange way, was when they'd talk about how they needed to do a fundraiser, or a GoFundMe account for that individual, or set up an account for those individuals at the bank or something like that. And it only irritated me because I knew how inexpensive basic term life insurance is. Basic term life insurance for a couple $100,000 might be as cheap as $10 or $15 a month. And it's just something that, if you've got a family, if you've got people that you're financially caring for, I was begging people day in and day out, as a life insurance agent for them to get life insurance. And I'd have people say, well, I don't need that. It's unlikely I'm going to die. I don't need to do that. I don't need to waste my time or effort or money. And in my mind, it just didn't make any sense. It's so cheap. It's so easy to get. There's no reason not to, make sure that at least you've got some basic coverage for your family if something were to happen. And of course, we're talking in the circumstances where there are people that you care for, right? So let's say you and your spouse both work. Well, both of you provide value, right? Financial value. Let's say your spouse doesn't work, but they, are helping to raise your children, or they are, a stay-at-home dad that, takes care of the things around the house. If something were to happen to them, there's a significant loss in value because you might have to pay somebody to do a bunch of the things that they were doing, before they passed away. So working, not working, man, woman, married, not married, you can pretty much find a reason for some basic life insurance coverage no matter the situation. Now, there are three basic approaches to life insurance, and you're going to want to know these approaches for purposes of the test, okay? And we'll review it when we get to the test as well. But there are three basic approaches. There's human life value, that basically estimates the income that you would earn over your lifetime if something were to happen and tries to replace that as far as life insurance. There's a needs approach where we just go through and make sure that debts get paid off. A little bit of income is there for an adjustment period. A lot of times the needs-based approach, though, isn't as much as the human life approach, because human life, if you work a job, you'd be surprised. Let's say you make $60,000 a year. Usually you need to times that by 20 to get the human life approach value for insurance. So you'd need $1.2 million in coverage. Where in the needs-based approach, you might come up with a number more like $300,000 or $400,000 of total coverage. Okay, so that's just quick examples, but it does give you a little bit of an idea of how different they can be. And then there's the capital retention approach that basically says how do we make sure that we preserve the income that the total income that I would have made. So the capital retention approach is the most costly one because you're replacing all income needs, for that would have gone over your lifetime. Okay. Human life value approach discounts it a little bit. So that's the difference between those two, where capital retention just gets you enough money to replace your income. So let's say, I make $60,000 a year, back to our example before, and I can get a 3% rate on my money. Okay. That means in the capital retention approach, I'd need $2 million in life insurance, because then that $2 million would create that $60,000 at 3% for indefinitely, right? And the capital retention approach is an indefinite approach, meaning it's going to create that income indefinitely, where the human life value approach is just going to replace it for a certain amount of time. Okay. Okay, we're going over it kind of quick, sorry, but those are the three main ways that insurance is sold, or that insurance is justified, I should say. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of insurance agents are trying to sell as much insurance as they possibly can. So if I told you that of those three, the capital retention approach is going to amount to the most insurance coverage, you can guess that there are agents out there, some of which are unscrupulous, that are just trying to sell that approach as the best approach, right? Yes, Elvira, I can actually just post these slides on the site as announcements. So we'll get that posted for you sometime tonight, okay? Since we're going through them kind of quick. All right, two basic main types of insurance. You've got term insurance that just protects you for a certain amount of time, like a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year level term, okay? 20-year level term is the most popular, but 10 and 30-year term policies are very common as well. Usually those term policies will have a set premium for the entire time, and then once it's over, right? You might have the ability to convert to something else, but as far as keeping that term insurance indefinitely, that just won't happen. The reason that insurance companies are willing to sell you that term insurance is because they statistically are banking on the fact that you will not die, right? Why would an insurance company give you $1 million worth of coverage for $100 a month? Well, it's because they don't think they're ever going to have to pay out that $1 million claim. Now, they know if they insure thousands of people that they're going to have a few of those claims that they have to pay. But it's going to be very uncommon, right, for young people to pass away. That just is uncommon. Now, when it comes to cash value life insurance, this is a type of insurance where the insurance company expects to pay. So the difference between these two, term insurance is very inexpensive because the insurance company expects not to pay, but it does buy you some peace of mind and it's very inexpensive. So it's got some nice advantages for you and I as consumers. Cash value insurance or whole life insurance is a little bit different because the insurance company expects to pay out the claim and they have to recoup enough money plus profit in order to make that a good deal for them. So cash value life insurance or whole life insurance is much more expensive, right? It might be as much as 10 or 20 times more per month than a term insurance policy because the insurance company knows or expects to pay out that insurance and they don't expect to pay out the term insurance. Okay? And then of course we've talked about how, and we're going to learn about more on the discussion board about different types of insurance, one of which is the universal type contract, the universal life type contract. Here are some different features on term insurance, being able to renew, convert. We're not going to go through that. Talks about when term insurance is appropriate. Well, it's appropriate when there's a certain amount of time to cover. Why would there be a certain amount of time to cover? Because maybe I'm 55 and I just want to insure as long as I work, right? And then when I'm 65, I have all my debts paid off. I have some money in the bank. If something were to happen to me, I'm covered. But if something happens before I'm done working, I want to replace that income for my family, right? That would be a good reason for a 10-year level term product. Or let's say I'm newly married, I'm starting my family, and I have very little money, right? I have very little cash flow. I have barely enough money to pay my bills. But I'm work, so does my wife. So maybe I want to get some real basic life insurance, just some basic term insurance, just to make sure that things would be okay if something happened for those that I leave behind. But I don't have enough money to pay for whole life insurance or any other type of coverage. I just need the least expensive thing. That would be term insurance. So we talk about cash value policies. There's all kinds of variations. It lists some different ones on the bottom of the page there. Not going to go through some of this stuff. We're going to be learning about variations of whole life insurance on the discussion board. Okay. Got two different types of universal policies as far as the death benefit. One has a death benefit that stays consistent. The other has a death benefit that's a rising death benefit. Different types of policies, quotes. What is a variable contract? Here's some definitions for you. Sorry, I'm moving through this really fast because I just want to get to the other chapter, okay? So that's a little preview of what that chapter's like, but you'll definitely want to, you'll definitely want to go back and read it. Okay. All right, I'm pulling up chapter 12. Give me just a second. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. Okay. You should see chapter 12, life insurance contractual provisions. Does everybody see that, Ron, Elvira? Okay. So you've got some contractual provisions of a life insurance policy that is consistent with every single insurance policy. Insurance can be owned by an individual, can be owned by an entity, but it always will have an ownership clause, which basically states that the policy owner has all the contractual rights associated with the policy. Okay. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because the insured, the person who's actually insured, and the policy owner might be two different people, right? It doesn't really matter if it's the same person. If I write a policy on myself and I'm the insured and I'm the owner, then I have control over my own policy, right? I can cancel it whenever I want. I can do whatever I want with it. But if my wife buys a policy on me, right? I'm the insured, she's the policy owner, and I call the insurance company and say, hey, I'd like to switch the beneficiary, or I'd like to cancel the policy, they're not even going to talk to me. Okay. The policy owner, okay, that can be different than the insured, is the only one that has right, only one or only entity that has rights to make adjustments to the plan, okay, adjustments to the policy once it's in force. Okay. Then you've got entire contract clause that basically says the application associated with the policy is part of the policy. And so any amendments or any changes to the policy don't mean anything unless they go through the insurance company, right? We can't change anything unilaterally. It has to go through the insurance company to be adjusted, and that makes sense. It doesn't make sense for us to be able to adjust it without them agreeing to those adjustments, because they're the ones that have to pay out in the end. All right, so what is this clause? The incontestability clause states that the insurer cannot contest the policy after it has been enforced for 2 years. What does that mean? It means that some people lie on their life insurance applications, okay? And basically, if the insurer doesn't detect that within 2 years and approach the, and basically, invalidate the contract within 2 years, or, which is all they basically do, is if they found that there was some kind of misdeed on the application, they would just reimburse the premium and cancel the policy at that point. But if they don't detect it, this incontestable clause basically says they can't do it after that. Okay? After that point, they can't do it. Suicide clause, a very interesting clause. And the reason we wanted to get to Chapter 12 and go through these is because these will all be helpful for your assignment this week. Okay? Your assignment this week is going to have these different contract features, and you're going to be describing how they work, right, for the assignment. So what is the suicide clause? This is something that was very surprising to many of my customers when I used to sell insurance. Basically, if a person commits suicide in the first year or 2 years, depending on the policy, the company I worked for, it was 1 year, but it's either 1 or 2 years. If they commit suicide within that 1 or 2 years, they don't get their death benefit. But if they commit suicide after that 1 or 2 years, depending on which insurance company is writing it, they do get a death benefit. So some people, I would say, you understand that this policy is not in force, does not pay a death benefit if you commit suicide in the first year. But if you commit suicide after this year due to mental illness, or due to any reason, if you commit suicide, the death benefit will pay. Okay? And then you can see that if it does happen within the grace period, that first year or 2 years, depending on the insurance company, then the insurer just refunds the premiums paid, but does not pay a death benefit if suicide happens that quickly after a policy is put in force. Okay? So the average person, if I asked them on the street, does life insurance cover suicide? They would say no, right? But they would be wrong. Life insurance does cover suicide, but it's after that grace period is over. Okay? You've got a reinstatement provision, which allows a person to reinstate a lapsed policy. Okay? A lapsed policy can't always be reinstated. Okay? It can be reinstated usually within 3 to 5 years of the date of the lapse. You usually have to pay the missing premiums, and you always have to prove you're still insurable. Okay? So this is a bad deal, because for some people, if they allow their insurance to lapse and then they get cancer, then they try to go back and reinstate their policy, the insurance company does not have to reinstate that policy, right? Because they have to prove their insurability, and if they've got cancer, they're uninsurable, and the insurance company does not have to issue a policy. Oh, Elvira, that's sad. I'm sorry. That's frustrating. So insurance was there, but wasn't effective yet. Dang it. Okay, we know about beneficiaries. We've got primary beneficiary, contingent beneficiary. Primary beneficiary is where the money goes first. If the primary beneficiaries are no longer, if they've predeceased the deceased, then it goes to your secondary beneficiaries, or what we refer to as contingent beneficiaries. Then you've got revocable and irrevocable beneficiaries. Revocable beneficiaries just means that it can be changed. Irrevocable means that it cannot be changed. Okay, and there are examples of different insurance. There are reasons for insurance to be irrevocable, meaning, you know, you cannot adjust the beneficiary. Okay, a couple more things we want to go over, and then we'll go over the test information. There's a misstatement of age or sex clause. Okay, if you misstate your age or if you misstate your sex, which males and females have different rates, right? Females in general live longer, so they have lower life insurance premiums. And if you're younger, you get lower premiums. So you can see there would be a reason or conflict of interest or reason for somebody to be dishonest on their application, maybe lie about their age or lie about their sex in order to get a lower premium. Well, if the insurance company finds out about that, they would adjust the premiums to what it should have been, okay? And then it moves forward, right? Change of plan provision just means that there's, plans can change. Absolute assignment means that you can assign your policy. If you're the owner, you can assign it to someone else. You can assign your ownership to like a charity. You can assign your ownership to a different family member. Absolute assignment means you assign all ownership rights over to somebody else. Most policies, if they're whole life policies, have loan provisions where you can take loans. There's different dividend options associated with policies. There's different non-forfeiture options, which basically mean if you're going to stop paying premiums, you have different choices beyond just forfeiting the policy and being done with it. There usually are paid up, options where you can have insurance that's paid up, might be a reduced amount. There's, extended term coverage, like it says here, where you get some term coverage for a time because of some cash value that you have. Instead of losing everything, you at least get something at the end. Different settlement options if for payout. Life income options always an option. You can have it paid over your entire lifetime instead of all in a lump sum. Insurance companies like to do that. It means that they can hang on to your money a little bit longer. There's the waiver of premium provision, which means that if the insured becomes totally disabled, the insurance company will continue the premiums for the insured. Okay, they'll be able to be covered even though they're disabled. So if you're disabled and can't work, but you have a waiver of premium rider, which is a benefit on a policy. Doesn't always exist. Some companies you have to pay for it, pay a little bit extra for it. But if it does exist and you become disabled, then they will pay your policy for you, okay, to keep it in force. There also might be a guaranteed purchase option, which means usually this is on somebody who's young. So if somebody buys a policy on a child, and then at certain ages they have the right to buy more insurance without having to prove that they're insurable. Usually the way insurance works is if you want more insurance, you have to show that you're still in good health, right? But this guaranteed purchase option means that at some point, at different specific ages, the insurance company will allow you to buy more without even having to prove that they're insurable. Why does this matter? Well, if you have a child that has a bout with cancer or has, type 1 diabetes, and you didn't, when they were first born, they were perfectly healthy as far as you were concerned. But as they aged, maybe there were different issues that came up. Well, that might be the only insurance that person's able to get ever in their lifetime. So, for example, if they become diabetic, juvenile diabetes, type 1 diabetic, guaranteed purchase option might be the only way that they can get additional coverage throughout the rest of their life. So that can be an important concept, something that might be very good to have, on somebody if you can afford to consider that. There's accidental death benefit riders, cost of living adjustments, accelerated death benefit riders. We're not going to go through all those, but just know that they exist. Viatical and life settlements are basically where, somebody sells their life insurance policy, okay? there's a business out there of buying life insurance policies. Just like when you see the ads on TV for buying annuities. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but there are companies that basically say if you have an annuity plan through an insurance company, they'll give you cash right up front for it. Well, the whole point of that is that they're going to make more, they're going to make a nice profit back by taking your income stream and switch you for some cash up front. Well, the same thing is true for life insurance. If you end up not wanting your life insurance policy, there are people out there and companies out there that will buy it from you to profit from it. Of course, they won't pay you, the full value. They have to make profits. So, let's say you've got a $100,000 policy, it's paid up. They might pay you, $75,000 for it up front before you even die, right? Because they know they're going to get the 100,000 at some point. Anyway, the point is that there are some companies out there that will buy life insurance contracts from you. Usually they're whole life insurance policies. Usually it's not term insurance that you're selling. Okay. Any questions about those slides? We really whipped through those fast, but I just wanted to give you kind of an introduction to some contractual features on life insurance before you get to the assignment this week. You'll want to study Chapter 12 a little bit, read through it a little bit before you get to the assignment this week. Okay, here's what we need to know for the test. On the test this week, there are only 10 questions, which very short. Okay, but here are the topics that you need to know. On number 1 on the test, it's basically a question asking you, when we talk about premium and premium paid, what are the different costs associated with a premium? Okay, obviously you've got cost of insurance, obviously, right? The premium that you're paying, and that cost goes towards your mortality expenses, goes towards the profitability of the company, that you're buying it from. But there's also a cost to you, an opportunity cost of being able to take that money and doing something else, right? Because, even if it's only $10 a month, you could get 2 Whopper meals for $10 right now. That's their special, right, at Burger King. So you're giving up 2 Whopper meals, the equivalent of 2 Whopper meals a month, if you're buying $10 worth of life insurance. And I joke a little bit, right? But in order to get life insurance, we have to give something up. There's always an opportunity cost to getting it. That's a serious concept. All of us have to make a decision. Is it worth the opportunities that we give up in order to buy this insurance? And unfortunately, about 2/3 of the population decide that it's not worth the small price that they pay to get life insurance. They just don't want to hassle with it. Number 2 on the test, you'll want to know the disadvantages and advantages of the capital retention approach. Remember, we went through 3 different approaches: human life value, lifetime, life value replacement, needs-based. Remember those 3? So you'll want to know what the book has to say about the disadvantages and advantages associated with the capital retention approach, and that will be what you need to know for number 2 on the test. Number 3 on the test. Okay. Number 3 on the test, you want to know the pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages of the human life value approach. The human life value approach. Number 4 on the test, you want to know the ins and outs, advantages, disadvantages of the needs-based approach. Number 6 on the test, you want to know the definition of the human life value approach. Okay. So there were 4 questions that I just rattled off that you're going to need to know the differences, the ins and outs of those 3 different methods for determining how much life insurance to get. You'll want to know what the book has to say about each one of them, what the pros and cons of each one of them are, and that will be 4 problems on the test. So that'll get you well prepared for the test, even if you just know those 3 things. Number 6 on the test is a provisions question. So once you've done the assignment for this week, number 6 on the test will be pretty easy because it's testing you on one of the provisions of life insurance that potentially is there. One of the things that we talked about tonight in Chapter 12 is one of these different provisions that we've already addressed. You'll want to know the reason why people buy accidental death benefits. Okay. Why is the reason people buy accidental death benefits? And you'll want to know what the book has to say about that, not some online site, but what does the book have to say about accidental death benefits. You'll want to understand the interest settlement options for life insurance. Interest settlement options. We talked about payout settlement options, but also you'll want to know about the interest settlement options. You want to know about the non-forfeiture options. We talked a little bit about those non-forfeiture options, what you can do with your policy instead of just allowing it to lapse. And lapse means just go away, right? Instead of allowing it to lapse, a cash value policy has some non-forfeiture options. What are those? What are the advantages and disadvantages of those? And then number 10 is testing your knowledge about the contestability period. This is something we talked about at the beginning of chapter 12. There's that period where an insurance company can contest information you put on an application. After that period, they no longer can. Okay, so that's the contestability period. You want to know how long that is and kind of the basics of what that is. Okay. All right. So that's what you need to know for the test. Those are the topics. Elvira, Ron, any particular questions or number, any numbers on the test that you didn't get a note down for if you were taking notes that I can repeat for you? Sweet. Well, you'll be in great shape this week if you've taken some notes from tonight. But if you do come up with any questions or concerns, zip me a quick email. We didn't talk about that at the beginning, but by far the easiest way to communicate with me is via email. Okay, just send me a quick email. I'll touch base with you back within 24 hours, usually faster than that, and you'll be in great shape. You can text me or call me. I've got my number listed. It's just that I have a day job and I'm not always available to take calls. Usually not available to take calls throughout the day. So email's great. All right, everybody, have a great night. Thanks again, Elvira and Ron, for being here as part of the live session. And have a great week this week. Let me know if there's anything we can do to help. Have a good night.